Chapter 1. The Breath Beneath the Stars. Your breath is slow tonight, like the wind moving across a sleeping plain. Beneath your ribs, something ancient stirs, not memory exactly, but something older still. A hum that has no language, a rhythm that belongs to the beginning. You close your eyes and find yourself beneath a sky untouched by names, where no map has been drawn and no line separates what is above from what is within. The stars are not scattered across the heavens. They are close, humming softly like distant kin. Their light does not pierce the darkness. It joins it, weaving silver into shadow. You do not walk through time here. You float inside it. There are no clocks ticking, only the beating of the fire at the center of your chest, echoing the pulse of the world before it was divided. You are not a person yet, not as you think of one. You are not a man or a woman, not a child or elder. You are a soul in motion, a breath in the great lungs of the earth. Your feet press into soil that remembers everything, the weight of mammoth bone, the hush of falling snow, the trembling silence after thunder. Around you, the night stretches wide and generous. Trees speak without words, and the wind carries stories not yet spoken. You feel them more than hear them, a gathering of quiet truths passed from leaf to root, from stone to skin. You are not outside of this story. You are woven into it. Your bones are borrowed from the hills, your blood pulled from the rivers that curve like serpents through forgotten valleys. The firelight flickers nearby, orange and slow. It does not blaze, it breathes. It feeds on the hush of the night and the soft hands of those gathered around it. Not strangers, but reflections of you, dressed in skins and smoke, their eyes wide with the wonder of being. You watch them, though you are one of them. You feel their questions, not asked with mouths, but with hearts open to the stars. Why are we here? Who made the light? Will it come again? These are not doubts but dreams, sent like whispers into the sky that listens back. You have no God yet, no temple, no scripture, but you have the stars, and they are enough. For now, the air is thick with breath and meaning. Someone hums a sound without melody, and it wraps around the group like a shawl. It is not music. It is remembering, an echo from somewhere far beyond the mountains. You close your eyes and drift into it. You are the hum. You are the fire. You are the dark between stars. There is no you, only this one great exhale of the world. In this space, before the weight of names and borders, everything touches everything else. The wolf is not feared but followed. The moon is not measured but marveled. You are not defined, and so you are free. Somewhere a hand reaches out, your hand or another's. It presses against the chest of someone beside you. The heartbeat there is slow, but strong, like yours. It is a promise without words. I am here, too. No need for language. The body knows. The bones remember. There are no lies in this time, because truth is not yet separate from breath. You speak in touch, in fire, in the rhythm of walking beside one another. Later, much later, you will have words for these things: love, tribe, longing. But for now, they simply are, as real and as fleeting as mist curling above a morning pool. A shooting star streaks across the sky, and the group falls into stillness. Not because it is rare, they do not yet know to call it a sign, but because movement in the sky mirrors the movement within. You feel it in your chest, a ripple of awe, of something vast noticing you. You look up and feel seen, not judged, not watched, but recognized, as if the sky, in all its unknowable breadth, nods and says, yes, you exist. And in that moment, it is enough. You need no answers because the question itself is sacred. Why are we here? Look up, the sky asks it too. Why do we breathe? Press your hand to the earth. It breathes with you. This is the gospel of the first humans, to wonder and to be wondered at in return. You wander from the fire, the night air cool against your skin. Your steps make no sound. The world does not resist you. It holds you. Your hand brushes against tall grass, and it bends like it remembers you. You pass a tree older than memory, its trunk wide with silence. You lean into it, and for a moment it leans back, not in motion but in presence. It has seen more nights than you can count, and still it stands. You feel comfort in that, the patience of bark, the endurance of roots. You are not the first to be afraid, to wonder, to long. Others have stood here. Others have leaned. Far off, a nightbird cries out. One long, low note. It does not seek an answer. It simply offers its song to the darkness. You understand. You close your eyes and offer something too. Not a word, but a feeling. It floats upward, invisible but true. Perhaps the stars will carry it. Perhaps it will curl around the branches and wait there for someone else. Perhaps it will echo back to you in time. You do not know. And that, too, is a kind of peace. There is no rush here, no goal to reach. The world is not waiting for you to prove anything. It simply invites you to be, to sit in the warmth of your own breath, to feel the sky stretch above and the earth cradle below, to remember, without memory, what it means to belong to something greater than story. You sit once more by the fire, and the others shift to make space. No words pass between you, only the quiet certainty that you are held, that you have always been held, even when you forgot. The stars begin to fade, not with speed, but with softness. A new light begins to edge the world, a light that does not shout but hums. The breath beneath the stars grows shallow, slower, like a child drifting into dreams. And in that soft closing of the sky, a thought forms, not spoken, not shaped, but felt, that all things which begin in darkness are touched by wonder, that before we had names, we had each other. We had sky, we had breath, and somewhere, beyond the hills, the sound of morning stirs. Not a break, but a continuation. The dream does not end. It only changes shape. You exhale, and the night folds gently around you. One last ember drifts upward, a tiny flame dancing toward memory. And far away, another fire is lit. Not yet seen, but already burning in the distance. A question waiting in warmth, ready for the next breath to arrive. Chapter 2, Footprints in Soft Ash. You walk slowly across a quiet plain where the wind barely stirs. The sky above you is colorless and wide, like the inside of a memory. Below, the earth is pale with ancient ash, soft, warm, and strangely familiar beneath your bare feet. You do not know how long this path has waited for you, only that it was always here, waiting. Each step you take sinks slightly into the dust, leaving behind a shape that whispers. And beside yours, older prints linger, delicate and fading. Some small, some long gone, pressed in long before your breath ever joined the wind. You do not speak, but you listen, not with ears, but with the soles of your feet, with the hush inside your chest. This is not a road made by wheels or walls or words. It is a trail etched by silence and repetition, left by those who walked not to conquer, but to continue. They walked not because they knew the destination, but because the rhythm of life demanded movement. Mothers with sleeping infants pressed close to their skin. Elders whose bones carried more stories than strength. Children who danced between the older prints, not yet afraid of where they were going. And others, those we do not know, who stepped through the ash not for survival, but perhaps for longing. Perhaps for wonder. The ash itself is not cold. It is the afterbreath of something once alive. Trees that burned, grasslands swallowed by flame, distant mountains that once opened their lungs and sighed fire into the sky. But even in destruction, something was left behind. A softness, a quiet blanket where the memory of movement could remain. Not fossilized like stone, not frozen like ice. Just held, just waiting. You kneel beside one print smaller than your own. Its edges are blurred, wind-worn, almost vanishing, and yet somehow still here, like a whisper, like a breath that refuses to stop echoing. You wonder who this was. Were they alone? Were they afraid? Did they look up at the same shape of moon? Did they hum while they walked? Did they carry hunger, hope, or sorrow in their stride? You will never know, and yet your body remembers. Deep in the bones of your legs, in the arch of your feet, in the sway of your hips, the ancient rhythm lives on. You are walking, yes, but you are also remembering. Every step is a translation. Every step is a reply. To walk is to trust the land. to lay your weight upon it and know it will not break. Your ancestors knew this not in theory but in touch. The ground beneath them was never dead. It was a breathing thing. It gave, it held, it bruised and blessed and remembered. And so, when they walked across ash, they knew it was sacred. Not because it was soft, but because it bore witness. And it still does. Even now. Even for you. Further on, the prints begin to change. They scatter, turn, cluster in small circles. Here someone stopped. Here someone waited. Perhaps they built a fire. Perhaps they wept. Perhaps they laughed so hard their breath lifted the ash. You cannot see their faces, but you feel the mood in the land, like the afterglow of a dream. A stillness that isn't empty, a hush that holds warmth. You place your hand over one of the deeper prints and feel the pressure it once knew, the full press of a soul upon the earth. Time folds gently in moments like this. There is no past, no future. Only this, a touch across ages. Ash tells no lies, cannot pretend. It records only what was given to it, foot by foot, hour by hour. There is honesty here, a quiet integrity in the way the earth remembers. It does not erase. It does not rewrite. It simply holds. That is its strength. And perhaps that is why we return to it, again and again, to ash, to soil, to earth, to ask what we have forgotten, and to walk again what was once walked before. You keep moving, not because you must, but because something stirs in you. A pull, a thread. Not fear, not urgency, but a kind of yearning. You want to know what lies beyond the prints, even if you never arrive. You want to feel the shape of belonging beneath your feet. You want to step where others have stepped and to add your rhythm to theirs. It is not a trail you will finish tonight, but that's not the point. The point is the stepping, the softness, the breath that joins you to the breath that once was. Up ahead, a strange formation appears. Not a structure, not quite, but a circle of stone. A few dark pieces of charcoal still remain, half buried, almost invisible. This was a place of pause, a hearth, a waiting point. Someone stopped here, perhaps many. They warmed their hands. They told stories in low voices. They rested their bones, just as you rest yours now. You sit within the ring, cross-legged and quiet, and let the warmth of imagined flames touch your skin. You do not need a fire to feel its memory. The air changes slightly. The wind is more curious now, wrapping itself around your shoulders like a question. The ash stirs faintly. A small print near the edge of the circle lifts into the light. A child's heel, pressed with wonder. And just beyond it, the gentle sweep of a dragging branch or stick. Perhaps a game. Perhaps a message. Perhaps a farewell. You do not know. You do not need to. Somewhere far behind, your own prints have begun to fade. Already the breeze is softening their edges, blending them back into the quiet. And that, too, is part of it. To be remembered briefly, to vanish gently, to walk without needing to last forever. The ash teaches you this. Presence without permanence. Memory without weight. Belonging without boundary. The sky above begins to darken into blue. A stillness settles around the circle, and you feel yourself sinking slightly deeper into the earth. Not in body, but in meaning. You have walked far, and yet you have only just begun. Somewhere beneath you, the oldest ash holds the ghost of another step. One you have not yet taken, one you do not yet understand. But it is yours, waiting. And as you rise, as you take the next slow, deliberate step, you are no longer following. You are becoming. You are part of the trail now. Not just a traveler, but a storyteller, a keeper of the ash, a whisper in the footprints yet to come. You do not speak. You simply walk. You do not rush. You simply move with the wind. And above, the stars begin to appear, quiet, ancient, watching. Chapter 3, The Fire That Remembers. It begins with a hush. The wind curls low to the ground, stirring old ash. And in the dimness of the cave, you sit, wrapped in a silence only broken by the soft breath of fire. The flames don't rage. They whisper, gently, as though retelling a dream that was once a life. Your hands, outstretched to the warmth, feel more than heat. They feel memory. They feel presence. The fire has no mouth, but it speaks in tongues your body remembers. Its glow casts shadows that dance across stone, shadows shaped like the ones who came before you. They gather again tonight, not in body, but in rhythm, a rhythm pulsing from ember to ember, from heart to heart. Long before words wore form, and before time wore names, there was fire. It was not invented. It was invited, coaxed from the breath of trees and the bones of lightning. And when it arrived, trembling in orange and gold, your kind circled close, not just to survive, but to remember. The fire did not only protect, it awakened. Around its edges, stories took root. Fingers traced shapes in the air. Eyes closed as chants hummed in low murmurs. The darkness beyond may have threatened, but within the circle of light, there was something sacred, something known. You did not yet know the shape of gods, but you knew the shape of this flame. It rose like a spirit and bent like a prayer. Each spark carried the weight of 1,000 suns, not in mass, but in meaning. And you, sitting beside your kin, saw more than light. You saw a mirror. In the fire's flicker, you caught glimpses of the beasts you'd hunted, the rivers you'd crossed, the faces you had loved and lost. Your mind, still learning the boundaries between dreams and memory, let the flame lead you through both. It spoke not in order but in feeling, not in logic but in rhythm, a pulse, a beat, a warmth. There is something eternal about a fire that is watched by many eyes, and though those eyes change, the watcher remains. Tonight it watches you, not as something separate but as something within. You are not apart from this ritual, you are its continuation. You too now feed the flame, with your breath, with your gaze, with the slow tilt of your thoughts turning inward like smoke curling into the night. Around you, others are quiet, but not silent. A shuffle, a sigh, a long exhale. All speak in the language of the fire. There are no words yet for love, but you feel it. In the way your shoulder brushes the one beside you. In the way someone shifts their fur so you won't be cold. In the way food is passed, hand to hand, with nothing but the soft nod of gratitude. These are the first prayers, though you do not call them that. The fire hears them anyway, consumes nothing greedily. It burns slow, like time itself breathing. And in this burning, it remembers. Once, in another life, a child sat near such a fire, wide-eyed and still. That child was you, and not you. It was someone whose blood walks in your bones. She watched the flames with the same awe. He heard the same whispers in the crackle. They saw gods take shape in rising smoke. Long-legged deer spirits, ancestors with glowing eyes, winged dreams that passed overhead like stars too low to name. These visions live on, not in books or stone, but in warmth, in breath, in the endless listening done with closed eyes and open hearts. You lean closer now, not to get warm, but to hear. The flame pops, and in that sound is a memory not your own. A forest hunt, the scent of rain, a child's cry beneath the moon. You feel the echoes of footsteps around this fire, footsteps long turned to dust. But the dust remains. It clings to the cave walls. It sits in the fur of those nearby. It rests beneath your nails. You are made of it, and it is made of all who came before. No one speaks, yet everything is said. A hand places a log gently on the embers, and the flame rises a little higher, as though pleased by the offering. You wonder how many such offerings have been made. How many hands, trembling with reverence, have fed this sacred glow. You wonder if, long after you are gone, another pair of hands will do the same, unaware that they are part of something ancient and tender. The fire will know. The fire always knows. Outside, the cold creeps, indifferent and wide, but it is held at bay by this soft, golden boundary. A circle not just of stones and sticks, but of memory and meaning. Here, in this hush, you are not alone. You are never alone. The fire ensures this. It binds. It gathers. It reminds. And even as your eyes grow heavy, and the world begins to blur, the flame stays steady, watching, guarding, speaking in the only language that never had to be learned. You close your eyes, but still see the glow. You drift, but still feel the warmth. The fire has always been more than a flame. It is the first teacher, the first storyteller, the first witness. It remembers your name even before you had one. And as your breath slows and your thoughts soften into dreams, it welcomes you into its memory, not as a visitor, but as a part of its ever-burning soul. Somewhere in the quiet beyond the cave, an owl calls. Somewhere further, frost kisses the grass. But here, near the fire, time melts. The past leans forward. The future leans back. You rest in between, held by light and history. And as the fire burns on, steady, sacred, still, it whispers a question not in words but in warmth. Who will tend me next when your eyes have closed and your story is passed into smoke? The flame leans a little lower, not out of weakness, but out of knowing. And so we drift onward into the next ember of memory, into the next hush of night. Chapter 4, Songs That Were Never Sung. Before your voice was a tool for meaning, it was a vessel of breath. Not words, not yet, but something softer, more ancient. A hush that curled into the cold night air. A sigh beneath the moon that wasn't meant to be heard, only felt. Long before the drums, before flutes carved from bone or string bent by firelight, there was rhythm. Not outside you, but inside. The rhythm of your feet meeting the earth. The hush of your breath as you crept beside the shadow of a deer. The sound of your heart when thunder echoed across the open plain. These were your first songs, not crafted but inherited. Not taught but remembered. The music of motion. The lullaby of being. You do not carry these songs in your memory. You carry them in your marrow. They are not etched into scrolls or passed through generations with ceremony. They live in the way your shoulders rise with tension, the way your fingers drum on stone when you think no one is watching. The old songs never had a beginning. They emerged from silence like smoke from flame, slow, curling, soft. Sometimes, a hum would rise from a woman gathering roots. Not a tune, but a warmth. Sometimes, a man would echo a bird's cry, not to mimic, but to join. And together, slowly, unknowingly, they were weaving something. Not melody, not poetry, but presence. A sound that held them. A sound that said, "We are here." There was a time when the world itself was an instrument, and you, a listener with your entire body. When rivers spoke in ripple tongues and wind etched verses through the grass. The crunch of frost beneath foot was percussion. The whisper of a reed in your palm was a flute. A baby's laughter was a bell rung by breath alone. You did not orchestrate. You listened, and in that listening you joined the chorus. Not as a composer, but as a heartbeat. When you cupped your hands to the fire and sang nothing, the silence between the flames became sacred. That too was music. Sometimes your ancestors would sit in circles and pass a sound, not a story, a vibration, a moan, a shared exhale. One would begin not knowing why. Another would follow not knowing how. And so they layered their breath into a blanket of sound that wrapped around their fear, their hunger, their wonder. They didn't ask if it was beautiful. They didn't need beauty. They needed only the comfort of a voice that wasn't their own. In the dark, where beasts hunted and the cold bit deep, these unshaped songs became shelter. Not walls, but warmth. Not answers, but a place to rest. You are born of these tones. The ones that rise not from language, but from longing. The ones that move not in scales, but in seasons. Each note your body makes when it stretches, aches, sighs. That is the music that came first. And though your world now hums with polished rhythms and perfect keys, you still crave the unrefined, the raw, the wind-shaped. That is why lullabies soothe you, why wordless humming brings peace. It is not nostalgia. It is recognition. Some part of you still remembers a time when the moon was enough light to dance by and the sound of a mother's breath was the only melody that mattered. In the caves where echoes lived, your people learned that sound could live after breath. A clap, a shout, a chant. It rebounded. It returned. It meant they were not alone. And so they played with it, not as performance but as proof that they existed, that they mattered. You can almost hear it now. the low pulse of their feet on packed earth, the rising howl that wasn't pain or joy, but something else entirely, something sacred, something unnamed. You do not need to understand it. You are made from it. No one wrote these songs. No one recorded them, but they shaped the ones that came after. The way stories are told, the way prayers are whispered, the way we lean in when someone sighs. You carry the echo of those unsung verses in your gestures, in the quiet moments between thoughts, when you walk alone and hum without knowing why, when you press your ear to a shell and swear it sings, when you cry and your voice breaks into something not quite human. That is where the old music lives, not in museums, not in memory, but in the breath between words. Perhaps they never meant to make music. Perhaps they only meant to survive. But survival has its own rhythm, its own refrain, every heartbeat a drum, every step a stanza. And when they stood on the edge of a world they could not name, they sang. Not for joy, not for sorrow, but because the silence was too wide, too empty, and singing filled it, not fully, but enough. You can feel it, can't you? That pull in your chest when the night grows still. That longing for something you never learned but somehow know. That quiet ache that only comes when you're safe enough to listen. It is not a song, not as you know it. It has no beginning, no end, only a middle that stretches forever, like dusk refusing to fall into night. A vibration that asks for nothing but witness. You are not the audience. You are the instrument. So tonight, as your breath slows and your eyelids soften, you return, not to a place, not to a time, but to a feeling that sound can be shelter even when silent, that you are made not just of cells and stories, but of echoes, that your body is a cave where ancient music still dances. You do not need to sing it. It is already singing you, and somewhere, far ahead or far behind, another song waits, a note not yet heard, but already felt. Chapter 5, The Silence After the Hunt. The wind settles into hush as the dust of the chase drifts back to earth. The echoes of the hunt, the soft footfalls, the breathless charge, the whistle of the spear, have faded into the trees behind you. There is no roar of victory, no wild cry, only your chest rising in rhythm with the one who no longer breathes, whose great eyes, now still, once mirrored the dawn. You stand over the fallen body, not as a conqueror, but as a listener. The silence that blooms now is not emptiness. It is a presence. It is the sound of the earth holding its breath, of your soul reaching back towards something older than pride. Your hand, still trembling from the throw, moves gently across the fur, tracing the warmth that lingers. This moment is not about power. It is about exchange. Something ancient within you bows, not with your knees, but with your breath. You are part of something now. The cycle does not ask for applause. It asks for stillness. Your tribe will eat. The fire will burn. But now the world must pause. The space between life and death is not a void. It is a bridge. You feel it beneath you like a thread stretched through time, woven by hands you cannot see, but have always known. Behind you, the others wait. They do not step forward yet. They, too, know the quiet must be honored. This was never only about food or survival. It was about spirit, about balance. The animal you hunted was not a thing. It was a teacher, a shadow of yourself. You saw your reflection in its muscles, its breath, its wild caution. The chase was a mirror. Now, with the stillness, the lesson arrives. Not in words, but in something older than language. Something shared in the hush between two heartbeats. One ending, one continuing. You press your palm to the ground beside the body. The soil remembers. You imagine your ancestors here, not just from yesterday, but from long before the names, before the tools had sharp edges, before the words for animal and human drifted apart. You see them now, crouched in this same reverent posture. You are them. They are you. The silence wraps around this memory like mist curling in the branches. It is not a loss. It is a return, a remembrance that we all come from breath, from hunger, from the need to feed and the longing to honor. The sky above you does not celebrate or grieve. It watches, unblinking, as it has for tens of thousands of years. The stars do not flinch when blood touches stone. The moon does not look away. This stillness was made long ago, shaped into the rhythm of the world like the grooves in a drum. It knows this moment. It holds it gently. You feel it as you close your eyes. The silence is not yours alone. It belongs to the wind, to the dust, to the creature who gave its body, to the child back at camp who will eat and grow strong, to the woman who waits by the fire and feels the shift in the world the moment your spear flew. And then, as if summoned by your thoughts, a breath breaks behind you. A fellow hunter steps forward, not with words, but with the softest of sounds, footsteps in grass, a hand resting on your shoulder. Together, you begin to work, not hurriedly, not carelessly, but with the rhythm of ritual. Each movement, cutting, wrapping, lifting, is a whisper. There are no songs here, no drums, only breath, only the hush that follows when something sacred has occurred. The others join you. No one speaks. You all remember, not with your minds, but with your bodies. The way the old ones taught. The silence is the teacher now. It fills your bones like firelight. You do not need to explain. You do not need to understand. You only need to feel the weight of the moment, the way it settles into the marrow of memory. This is how knowledge passed through time before stories had sound, through action, through reverence, through stillness. You lift the creature together, wrapped in leaves and fur, and begin the walk back. The forest parts for you like a prayer answered. Even the trees seem quieter. A branch creaks above, not in protest, but in witness. A bird flies away, not startled, but acknowledging. The air is thick with meaning. It is as if the world itself is cradling the moment, carrying it back to the fire with you, where others wait, not just for food, but for the return of the ones who went into the silence and emerged changed. Back at the fire, there is warmth waiting, and faces full of quiet knowing. A child stirs in her sleep, sensing the shift. The dogs lift their heads, then settle again. You do not announce what happened. You sit, you breathe. The silence follows you like a cloak. One by one, your companions arrive. No one speaks yet. The fire speaks enough, crackling in soft rhythm. Sparks lift like memories, rising into the night. Then, slowly, words return. Simple ones, gentle. Not about the hunt, but about the morning. About the child's laughter. About the shape of the clouds. You speak not to tell, but to belong. The silence has shaped you. Now the words must fit around its edges. They must not disturb what was honored. They must carry it forward. The food will come. The songs will rise later. But for now, the hush remains. Sacred. Whole. Even later, when the meal is shared and laughter bubbles like water from stone, there is a gentleness to it, a softness behind every smile. You have all stood on that edge between breath and no breath. You have all knelt at that invisible altar. And something in you remembers, not just this time, but all the times before. Each hunt, each silence, each life exchanged and honored. Each thread in the great weaving. The fire grows lower. Shadows grow longer. The stars return, blinking like distant eyes watching from the beginning of time. You lie down on the earth, your body tired, your spirit full. And in the hush that follows, in the gentle silence after the hunt, you hear the oldest song, the one without words, the one that echoes in the bones, a lullaby of belonging. Your hand rests on your chest. The heartbeat continues, quiet, steady, grateful. The silence is no longer outside you. It lives within, a companion, a reminder, a sacred hush that speaks without sound. And as your breath slows, the firelight flickers once more, reaching softly into the dark, like the memory of a hand, still warm, still present, still holding on. And in the next breath, we listen to what the stars whispered long before we lit our first flame. Chapter 6. Wolves beside you. You do not walk alone through the hush of the forest night. The sky is heavy with stars, and every breath you take is shared. There are paw prints beside yours in the damp earth, soft and silent, circling your steps like memory. You do not own them, and they do not follow. They are there, simply there, like fire, like shadow, like wind. You see them sometimes in the flicker beyond the trees, yellow eyes glowing like coals, not threatening, not tame, but present. And in that presence, there is a thread thin and ancient, spun not from leash or command, but from something wordless, older than names. The wolves beside you do not need language to understand the shape of your fear. They feel it as you do. They watch what you watch. They hunger when you hunger. And sometimes, when you rest, they rest too, near enough to be known, far enough to remain wild. There is a time before villages, before pens and collars, before fur became clothing and names became cages. In that time, a child sleeps by the fire, and a wolf curls just beyond the circle of warmth. Neither belongs to the other, yet something flows between them, a silent agreement written in shared breath and mirrored caution. The fire crackles, but the bond is older than flame. It rises from shared need, from the dark tension between danger and closeness. The child dreams of running through the snow, and the wolf dreams of a voice without sound. In the morning, their prints follow each other through the white, intertwined, like memory with instinct. You see them as warnings once, flashes of gray muscle in the trees, a low growl in the dark that stills your hand on the spear. But slowly, slowly, they become something else. The growl softens, the stare lingers. They do not attack, they do not flee, they stay. And you begin to notice that your nights are safer when they are near. The forest does not press so heavily against the edge of your shelter. The shadows do not creep so boldly. In time, the rustling of paws in the underbrush feels less like a threat and more like a rhythm, like a song sung in silence, like a second set of eyes keeping watch. You begin to leave scraps behind, a bone, a skin, a breath, and they accept these things not with gratitude, but with understanding, as if this too is part of the pact. And so the line begins to blur, not quickly, not with ceremony, but with the slow erosion of separation, worn down by snow and time. You eat, they eat. You watch, they watch. You move, they move. And then one night, as the frost bites into the bark and the moon hangs low like a breathless eye, one of them sits beside you, not touching, not growling, simply there. You do not speak, but your silence is enough. Something has passed between you, unseen but undeniable. A thread has tied itself from your heart to theirs, and though neither of you pulls it, neither of you dares let it go. They do not become soft. That is not the story. They remain sharp, wild, coiled with old instincts and the echo of the hunt. But they change, and so do you. They begin to know your voice not as command, but as rhythm. They read your eyes, not for weakness, but for direction. They are not tamed. You are not dominant. What grows between you is not mastery, but reflection. Two different flames learning to dance without burning each other. When danger comes, you do not face it alone. When you sleep, they lie in the cold, watching, alert. You feel them even in dreams. A presence, steady, circling, awake. And when you wake, they are still there. Their breath is steam against the dawn. Their ears twitch at the song of birds, but their gaze is fixed on you. You stretch, and so do they. You rise, and they follow. Sometimes ahead, sometimes behind, sometimes at your side, like shadows with souls. And you know, in a way that doesn't need words, that this is not coincidence. This is not convenience. This is covenant. This is something older than tools, deeper than hunger. This is two species weaving their paths together beneath the open sky. In time, others notice. They see the way the wolves linger when you pass, the way they do not flee at your approach. Some are afraid, some are angry, but most are silent, watching, wondering if the forest is speaking to you in a way they cannot hear. You say nothing. You do not need to explain. For the ones who understand, words are too small. And for those who do not, no sentence will be wide enough to hold what you have shared. All you know is this: when the fire is low and the night is long, you are not alone. And that, in this world of fleeting breath and bone, is something sacred. The bond does not end with death. Even now, even after the fur fades and the forest shifts, you carry the howl inside you. It is buried in your marrow, stitched into the rhythm of your heartbeat. The way you look into the eyes of a dog and feel something ancient stir, that is no accident. That is a memory older than memory. That is the wolf beside you, still watching the stars, still walking the frozen earth in your dreams. You are never far from that fire. You are never far from those paw prints. They walk with you still, through cities, through silence, through the spinning of years. A guardian, a mirror, a fragment of wildness that never truly left. And when the world grows too bright, too loud, you can still close your eyes and return. Back to the place where snow muffled every step, where the forest spoke in sense and silence, where the fire flickered like breath. And there, beside you, not leashed, not named, not owned, a wolf waits, yellow eyes glowing like home. You do not speak, you do not move, but in your stillness, something returns. Something old, something true, something that cannot be tamed, only trusted. You breathe in, the frost touches your lungs. You hear paws in the dark. And once more, beneath the endless sky, you remember what it means to be known without words, to be guarded without chains, to be followed not because of fear, but because of fire. Not all kinship wears a face like yours. Not all family walks upright. Some loyalty is wild, some love untamed. And so you sleep, wrapped not just in warmth, but in the ancient knowing that somewhere, always, something watches, something listens, something runs beside you, not ahead, not behind, but with you. And still the howl lingers, a call not to obey, but to remember, a thread pulling you toward the next path, the next bond, the next fire still waiting to be lit. Chapter 7. Painted Hands on Stone. The cave is not dark. It is hushed. It is slow. Its silence is not absence, but reverence. A soundless chant held together by dripping stone and the warmth of ancient breath. You move deeper into the hollow, your footsteps softened by time itself. Your fingers reach for the wall, and what greets you there is not merely stone, but story. Pressed, painted, imprinted. The mark is unmistakable. The outline of a hand, stained in rust-red ochre, half open as if reaching not outward, but inward, toward you, through you. It is small, perhaps the hand of a child, or perhaps that of someone no longer remembered by name, but remembered still in shape and shadow. You rest your palm near theirs, not to match it, but to feel the echo. It is not history, it is communion. You don't know their language, their tools, their customs, but you know this gesture. You know what it means to press your being against a world that does not yet understand you. You know what it feels like to want to be seen, to say, I was here, without needing to speak. And so you understand them, these early ones, these silent artists who stood before stone, with ash on their fingers and fire in their breath, and left behind not sentences, but something older. Soul print, shadow, spirit. The handprints come in clusters now, scattered like stars across the walls, constellations of presence. Some are layered upon each other, fading like dusk into night. Others are bold, still pulsing with the weight of intention. You can imagine the gathering, not frantic, not ceremonial, but gentle. A pause during migration, a moment of stillness in a world of weather and wandering. A group sits near the fire, grinding ochre, mixing it with fat, dipping palms into bowls. The children laugh, the elders guide, and slowly, one by one, they rise. They approach the stone not as an object, but as a witness. They place their hands and leave them behind, not in surrender, not in farewell, but as roots reaching toward the future. The stone breathes this into you, and you begin to wonder what it means to leave a trace. In your world, names are carved into glass and paper, pixel and page. But here, in this quiet time before writing, there is only pigment and will. And yet, here it remains. Thousands of seasons later, it still holds its form, still speaks, still calls to your skin as if it remembers you. And maybe it does. Maybe your hands carry the same longing. Maybe deep in your bones, There is a memory older than words, a memory that recognizes home in ochre and curve. The fire in the cave flickers now, not in front of you, but behind your closed eyes. You see it clearly, not as fantasy but as felt truth. Figures in the glow, shadows dancing across stone. One child dips their hand into the mixture too deeply and laughs as it drips from their wrist. A woman hums softly as she places her palm high above the rest, her fingertips brushing the ceiling like a prayer. An elder presses their hand near the cave's entrance, a sentry at the threshold between dark and dawn. None of them say why they do this. They don't need to. The hand is enough. The hand is a hymn. And so you wonder, what will remain of you? Not your name, not your image, but maybe the way you touch things. The warmth you left on another's shoulder. The way your fingertips lingered on a page or a face or a moment that mattered. Perhaps that is the true painting, the one no one sees but everyone feels. Perhaps that is what it means to leave behind a trace that endures. The walls begin to curve inward now, and your breath slows. The deeper parts of the cave are cooler, quieter. Time seems to pool here unmoving. You notice newer handprints mixed with the old, tourists, perhaps, or those seeking connection but lacking reverence. Still, the stone accepts them. The cave does not judge, simply holds. It remembers, and in this holding, in this quiet remembering, something sacred continues. Outside, the world has changed. Cities pulse with light. Satellites spiral through the night. Languages multiply and dissolve. But here, inside the stone womb, the first voice still speaks. It does not need to explain. It only needs to exist. And you, modern, restless, full of clocks and code, you stand still long enough to hear it. The ochre fades, but the hand remains. Even as pigments peel and moisture eats at the cave, the memory endures, not in the material, but in the meaning. You close your eyes, and you see your own hand, not as it is, but as it was before it held anything. Before it built or broke or typed or touched. You see it as it once was, open, soft, wondering. A map not of lines, but of longing. A shape that asks nothing but to be seen. And maybe that is what those early humans wanted too. Not to teach, not to record, but to be met. To reach across time not with information, but with intimacy. To leave behind a whisper, not a command. I lived, the prince says. I felt. And in hearing this, you feel it too. You answer without speaking. You belong without needing to explain why. The air in the cave is thicker now, not with smoke, but with memory. You inhale slowly, and something within you quiets. The noise of the outer world, with its sirens and schedules, dissolves. You are not here to interpret. You are here to remember, not with mind, but with marrow. You press your own hand to the cool stone. There is no ochre, no ash, no need. Only presence, only breath. For a moment, your pulse aligns with the rhythm of those who came before. You are not alone. You never were. You are one more imprint on the wall of time, and that is enough. Outside, the stars wait. The same stars they saw, though the sky has turned. The same wind hums through the earth. And deep in your chest, a silence blooms. The kind that listens more than it speaks. The kind that understands that the oldest truths do not need to be told. Only touched. Somewhere ahead, another wall awaits. Another cave, another fire, another gesture made in the dark. But for now, you stay, hand to stone, still, remembering, listening. And as the last flicker of ancient flame glows behind your eyes, you begin to drift, not away, but deeper, toward the next story, toward the next voice, a chapter where breath becomes vision, and vision becomes song. Chapter 8, The Fire Circle of Dreams. You sit in the hush of a world that has not yet been written, your back curved against the bones of the earth, your breath fogging softly into a night that does not end. Before you, the fire sways, not as flame alone but as something older, a moving spirit that dances without feet, speaks without voice. The circle around it is not just made of stone and people. It is made of waiting, of watching, of something unseen reaching through the quiet. The air shivers with memory. You are not alone. Even when the others sleep, the fire stays awake, remembering what they have forgotten. There are no words yet for what you feel, only a curl of wind and flicker of light. But you know it anyway, the story that rises like smoke, the vision that drifts in the sparks. One raises a hand, casting long fingers across the stone wall, and suddenly that shadow becomes a deer running. Another hums low, a sound like the ground before it rains, and you understand it as thunder, as warning, as song. Around the fire, silence is not empty. It listens, it gathers, it shapes. The dreams that arrive here do not come from inside. They step gently in from somewhere else. The heat touches your skin, and the scent of ash becomes a kind of language. You can feel the others dreaming beside you. The way their eyelids twitch, their limbs soften, their breathing syncs with the flicker of flame. Dream is not sleep here. It is a second waking, a sideways seeing. In these dreams, you chase animals that speak, climb cliffs made of starlight, touch hands you've never seen in daylight. You don't ask where they come from. The fire does not need to be questioned. It gives what it gives. And so the circle becomes more than a place. It becomes a time, a thin place where the skin between worlds softens. You hear stories that have not yet been spoken aloud, but already they live in your blood. One night, an elder lifts a glowing coal on a flat stone and holds it high, not to burn, but to show. Everyone watches as the ember becomes a sun in miniature, and in its glow, someone begins to chant. The words do not exist in your mouth, but you feel them press gently behind your eyes, as if they've always been there. This is how language is born, not with grammar, but with breath and heat and gaze. The wind changes, and the fire leans toward it like a listening animal. In this moment, the shadows stretch long and slow, curling across the faces of your kin. Some smile in their sleep, others frown. One stirs and speaks a word they do not know they've learned. Something soft, vowel-shaped, older than any name. No one answers aloud, but you hear the fire say it back. You close your eyes and dream, and in that dream the fire walks. It leaves the circle and strides across the plain, touching each tree with light. Wherever it walks, it leaves behind memory, not in objects, but in feeling. You see it brush a stone, and that stone now remembers warmth. You see it pass a cave, and that cave now dreams of gathering. You understand something you cannot speak. That fire does not belong to you. You belong to it. It is the center not because you made it so, but because everything leans toward it: time, thought, silence. When you wake, your hands remember the dream even if your mind does not. You press mud into a wall and draw a spiral. You do not know why, only that it is needed. Another sees your spiral and adds lines, shapes, echoes. Soon the wall becomes a sky of memory, each mark a door. The fire crackles in the background, approving without sound. It knows that what you create by firelight holds something sacred, not because it is accurate, but because it is dreamed. A child throws herbs into the flame, laughing as the smoke turns blue. Someone hums a rhythm and others follow, feet tapping, palms striking thighs. The circle moves again, not as individuals but as one dreaming animal, warm-blooded and slow. You close your eyes and see yourself from above, a shape among many, flickering like a shadow on the edge of time. The fire watches you, and in its gaze you become myth. The night deepens, and the stars become clearer, not as pinpoints but as openings, bright wounds in the sky that leak soft wonder. You wonder if the stars, too, gather in circles, if they dream of Earth as you dream of them. The fire pops, and a coal lands beside your foot. You watch it fade from red to black, and you feel a sadness that is not sorrow, but gratitude. The kind that knows all things must pass, and yet nothing is ever truly gone. You turn to the one beside you, whose name you do not speak, because names are not yet a thing. But you know them by the rhythm of their step, by the angle of their sleep, by the way they hum when they carve. They meet your eyes, and for a moment, the fire flickers between you. You see their dream reflected in yours, like a story shared before it has even begun. The circle stills. The flames grow low. Embers curl inward like breath drawn deep. Around you, bodies curl into the ground, arms folded, feet bare, hearts open, and the fire remains, not roaring but remembering. You lie back, letting the earth hold you. You do not fall asleep. You descend. You float. You return not to a place but to a rhythm, one that beats in sparks, in hands, in the hush between drumbeats. Somewhere in the distance, a tree falls, not loudly, not in pain, but like a sigh. The sound reaches the fire, and the fire nods. It knows this too is part of the dream. Everything is part of the dream, even you, even now. And as the smoke rises, it carries your breath into the sky, where it mingles with the wind, with the stars, with the warmth of all fires that ever were. You do not see the shape it takes, but you feel it, something spiraling, slow, sacred, a memory being born. You sleep not to forget, but to remember in another language. The fire knows, the stars know, and somewhere, far across the plain, another fire flickers to life, as if answering a question no one asked aloud. And so, the night continues, softly, endlessly, as you drift toward the next dream, toward the next fire, toward the place where silence becomes meaning, and breath becomes light. Chapter 9. When the moon was our only clock. You sit in the hush of night, your back against the earth, your eyes tracing the curve of the sky where she hangs. Not distant, not silent, but near enough to breathe. The fire behind you crackles low, casting slow shadows across the furs and faces of your kin. But it is her light that paints the moment in silver. She watches with that quiet fullness, that ancient patience, as if she has always known your thoughts before you do. Before language, before the names for longing or hope, there was only this: the moon, the rhythm of her return, and the feeling in your chest that something eternal was watching. You do not call her the moon. You do not need to. She is the first calendar etched in the heavens, and she keeps time in a way that no stone or bone ever could. She speaks not in numbers, but in curves and silence, in the slow inhale of her waxing, and the long exhale of her fading. You know when to fish because she tells you. You know when the elk will pass through the low valley. You know when the waters will swell, when the berries will burst, when the women should rest and when they should prepare. You know these things not through words, but through memory, the kind that lives not in your mind, but in your blood. Her light does not blind. It soothes. It wraps itself around you like soft ash or the smoke of pine. When the sun shouts and scorches, she only whispers, gentle and silver. The children fall asleep beneath her glow, listening to the hum of their mothers' voices, soft and low. The elders speak stories that ride the edge of firelight, but the true story, the oldest story, is always above you, always her. She has watched the turning of every generation, the unspoken goodbyes, the silent prayers pressed into soil. Her gaze does not judge. It remembers. There are nights when she disappears, nights when her face is veiled and the dark thickens like grief. And in those nights, your people do not wander far. They wait, they huddle, they tell one another, she will return. And she does, always, as if to say even the darkest night ends, as if to promise that the turning of things is not an ending, but a breath between beats. Even the children learn to trust her rhythm, that even when all light seems gone, she is only sleeping behind the world. Sometimes you wake in the still hour, when even the owls do not call. You step quietly from your resting place, drawn by something soft and unseen. And there she is, above the ridge, brushing the trees with her glow, glistening across the river's skin. You feel her pulse in the soles of your feet, in the spaces between your ribs. You remember, without knowing why, that this light is older than memory, older than sorrow. That once, before the earth carried cities and clocks and names, she was the only guide, and she never failed. The women sing her into fullness. They paint her phases in ochre and ash, on the walls of caves and the curves of stone. She lives in their wombs, in the secret tides of creation. She lives in the morning songs, when someone is lost to the river or the sky. She lives in the drums and the dances, in the way your people move without needing to count. The cycle is not linear. It is not measured. It is known. And that knowing is enough. The hunters speak of her glow as a sign. On nights when she shines bold and round, they whisper, "Tonight we move." On other nights, when she thins to a sickle or hides her face entirely, they wait. They respect her silence. They heed her quiet warnings. Not all wisdom shouts. Some glows gently above you, asking only that you notice. And you do. You always have. No one owns her. No tribe claims her. No one carves her into pieces. She belongs to all. To the wolves who howl at her, to the trees who drink her glow, to the lovers who find each other in her light. She watches the migrations of beasts, the falling of snow, the birth of stars. She has seen the world die and bloom again over and over, and still she rises, still she shines, still she calls to you like a voice in the bone. Your elders say that long ago, before even they could remember, someone tried to trap her light in a bowl of water. They say the bowl cracked, and the water spilled, and that is why her reflection dances so wildly in rivers now. You know it's not true, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that her presence invites stories, not to explain her, but to feel her. Stories are not for solving. They are for remembering, for belonging. You sleep better when she is near. Even now, even in this restless world of names and numbers and noise, something in you quiets beneath her glow. Perhaps your ancestors still speak to you through her. Perhaps your breath still rises in rhythm with her pull. Perhaps she is the last thing you see before your dreams take hold. A reminder that some things never leave, even when all else fades. So you turn your face to her, eyes soft, body still. You do not ask for anything. You only watch. You only remember. The fire is low, the air cool, the night full of silence that means safety. And above you, the oldest witness continues her orbit, her soft glow sliding across the skin of the world like a lullaby. There is no need to understand the moon, only to feel her, to let her carry you in the way she has always carried the tides, the seeds, and the slow, sacred rhythm of your heart. And when her light fades again, you do not fear, for you have known her pattern. You have lived in her rhythm. You trust her silence as much as her light. You trust that in time, when the sky is ready, she will bloom again. And maybe, in the stillness before she does, you'll hear the stirrings of another rhythm, a deeper drum, older still, rising softly from the earth below your feet. A pulse that echoes not in the sky, but in the bones of the ground itself, a sign that the fire beneath the soil is beginning to remember. Chapter 10. The Bone That Tells Time. It begins with a bone, not sacred, not grand, just a hollow remnant of something once alive. But your fingers trace it gently, as if it still remembers the pulse of its original shape. Etched upon its surface are not words, not numbers, but small, deliberate incisions. Tiny marks made by stone tools, each one a whisper from a time when nothing yet had a name. You hold the bone in your hand, and in the quiet warmth of your breath, it becomes more than a fragment. It becomes a question, a pattern, a memory that does not belong to you but lives through you. Time, for those who came before, was not a circle, not a line, not even a rhythm, but a hunger. It swelled in the bellies of those waiting for the hunt to return, in the emptiness between the ripening of roots, in the stillness of absence after a loved one vanished into the cold. They did not count the way we do now. Instead, they noticed, a shadow growing longer, a tree losing its leaves, the color of the moon changing shape. And they marked it, not to master it, but to make meaning of the longing. A bone with notches became a story of cycles. A stone with lines became a song of return. You imagine their hands, worn, cracked, trembling in the cold, yet steady, steady as they carved. Each mark was not just a tally. It was a heartbeat, a missing face, a season without rain. Each groove carried the weight of memory and hope. You feel them under your own fingertips now, as if their breath lingers on the grooves. They did not know they were inventing time. They only knew that the sky changed, and they were still here, still waiting. In one hand, your ancestor held a shard of bone. In the other, the quiet of a long night. Perhaps she scratched one line for each moon her partner had not returned. Perhaps he carved a mark for each day the mammoth failed to pass through the valley. These were not calendars. They were grief made visible, hope turned tangible. In this way, time was not something separate. It was something they made with their own hands. The bone was not sacred because of what it was. It was sacred because of what it carried. In its markings lived the ache of continuity. Your ancestors had no language to say month or week or hour, but they knew the rhythm of waiting. They knew the cold that came again and again, and the fire that sometimes didn't. The scratches on the bone became the voice of silence, and in silence they heard themselves, somewhere along the riverbanks, beside ancient hearths long buried beneath layers of earth. The first memory of repetition was born. A sunrise, then another. A death, then another. A return. A departure. The bone did not count time. It remembered it. It held it the way a mother holds her child's first laugh, gently, without knowing whether it will be the last. Even now, when you close your eyes, you can feel it. That old rhythm beneath your skin. Not the rhythm of ticking hands or digital alerts, but the slow, ancient pulse of change. You are made of it. Your bones, too, tell time. Not in numbers, but in the way they ache when rain is coming. In the way your breath deepens as dusk arrives. In the way you remember someone long gone without knowing why. Imagine this. A group of wanderers by firelight, passing the carved bone from hand to hand. One sees moons, another sees absences, another the return of birds. Each sees what they long for, what they've lost. In this way, time became communal, a shared ache, a shared hope. The bone was not an invention. It was a mirror, reflecting their need to know that change had rhythm, that loss had a shape, that tomorrow might carry echoes of yesterday. The moon became their first teacher, not because it told them what day it was, but because it vanished and returned. Its waxing and waning gave them the gift of pattern. The bone, scratched by stone, recorded these disappearances. But the markings were never about control. They were about presence, about being awake to what vanishes and returns, about honoring the invisible thread that weaves night into night. Now, your modern world is wrapped in precision. Time is divided, sliced, regulated. You are taught to chase it, fill it, conquer it. But your body, your ancient body, still remembers the old ways. It remembers the way time once flowed like water, like wind, like breath. The way your ancestors knelt before bones and stones, not to measure, but to belong. There is something holy in their uncertainty, something sacred in not knowing exactly when, but feeling that something is shifting. You too feel this, when the air grows still before a storm, when a familiar smell brings back a forgotten face, when a child is born and the world seems paused. These are not moments measured by clocks. These are carved into you by experience. They are your bones' way of telling time. Even today, some bones carry these old marks. Archaeologists find them scratched, grooved, counted. They call them artifacts, tools, early calendars. But the truth is softer. These bones are lullabies of longing, testaments to patience, invitations to remember that time does not begin or end. It moves through the space between breaths, between heartbeats, between moments of not knowing and moments of awe. So you sit now, in the quiet of your room, and the hum of modern life begins to fade. In your hands, you imagine that ancient bone not as an object, but as a whisper. You trace the invisible lines it carries across your chest, across your ribs, down to the soles of your feet. You remember that your own body, too, tells stories in silence. The lines on your skin, the curve of your spine, the breath between each word, all of it is carved with time. And perhaps that is what your ancestors were trying to say. That to live is to remember, to mark without measuring, to wait without needing to know when. That time is not a cage, but a companion. That longing itself is a kind of clock, and each scratch, each step, each sigh brings you closer to something true. The night deepens. The marks on the bone disappear into the dark. But something remains, the soft echo of breath through centuries. And as your eyes begin to close, the question returns. If you were to mark time with feeling instead of numbers, what would you carve? Chapter 11. The wind that taught us. You do not see it, but it touches everything. Before you learned to speak, before you carved symbols into stone, before fire had a name, there was wind. It was the first voice you ever heard that did not belong to bone or blood. It pressed against your cheek with the hush of ancient breath. It moved through the grass with messages you could not hold, only feel. Your ancestors turned their faces toward it not in fear, but in wonder, because the wind was always arriving from somewhere else, always telling a story it could not stay to finish. You walked beneath skies that had never known cities, only stars and wide silence. And in that silence, the wind became your compass. It turned the leaves toward shelter before the rains came. It flattened the grasses where animals had passed. It brought the scent of fire or flower or foe. You learned not with your ears, but with your whole body. The way a deer lifts its head into the breeze. The way a mother clutches her child when the wind turns cold too quickly. The wind did not ask to be known, but it taught you just the same. Sometimes it howled across the stones like a beast without form, warning you that the night would not be kind. Other times it crept into the cave like a breath between stories, curling around your ankles as if to ask, "Are you still listening?" In these moments, you did not just survive. You remembered. You remembered that life was a rhythm, and the wind was its pulse. Rising, falling, arriving, vanishing. You had no calendars, no clocks, but the wind turned your world like a page, and you learned to read its invisible script. Carried pollen before you knew what seeds were. It pushed clouds across the sky like slow ships with secrets. It bent the trees to shape the land long before tools ever did. And somehow you understood this not with reason but with reverence. The wind did not belong to you, but you belonged to it. Every breath you took was a gift returned. When you exhaled into the air, a part of you was carried away, into the wide elsewhere where the stories drift. When a loved one passed, you buried them beneath earth, but it was the wind that took their voice. In dreams, you heard them again. Not in words, but in the rustling of leaves, in the hush that falls before a storm. You stood by rivers and let the wind sing through your hair like it had known you before your name was ever spoken. Perhaps it had. Perhaps the wind keeps a memory of all it touches, a quiet archive of every breath, every song, every final sigh. And in this way, it was not just teacher, but companion. You laughed into the wind, and it carried your joy farther than you could walk. You screamed into it when pain became too large to hold, and it made space for you. When there was no one else to hear, the wind still listened. Always there, always leaving, always returning in some new form. Just enough to remind you that nothing is ever really lost, only carried onward. The birds knew its roads. The trees knew its patience. Even the fire danced differently when the wind arrived. You sat in the long grass and watched how everything bent, how everything yielded, how nothing fought the wind. And in that yielding, nothing was broken. You learned that power did not mean resistance. It meant listening, adapting, becoming. You learned to move without pushing, to travel without leaving, to speak without sound. And still it remains. The wind that touched your ancestors now touches your face. It is older than memory, yet it feels like home. Cannot be held, yet you recognize it. It changes nothing by itself, but it changes everything it touches. You walk through it now like your ancestors once did, not thinking of it as you pass, but still feeling it brush against your skin like a whisper from a time before time. You breathe, and the wind breathes with you. And sometimes, in the deepest part of night, when the stars are still and the fire is low, you feel it again, the wind against your face, as if leaning close to tell you something it only tells those who are quiet enough to hear. Not a warning, not a command, but a remembering, a reminder that even when you forget the old ways, even when you no longer walk barefoot on the earth or follow the birds to new lands, the wind has not forgotten you. There is a wisdom in it that does not grow old. It moves through cities now, too, tugging at coats, whistling through cracks, carrying pollen still. It slips through the fingers of children and the hands of elders. It finds its way into the silence between words. And even now, it teaches. Even now, it sings. Even now, it waits for someone like you to stop and feel again. To remember that before we had names for the elements, we listened to them. And maybe, in some quiet way, the wind is still teaching. Not in the loud storms or the howling gales, but in the soft breezes that make you pause without knowing why. In the flutter of curtain just before sleep. In the sigh of leaves that sound like a forgotten lullaby. You close your eyes, and there it is, brushing your cheek, turning the page, opening a doorway between what was and what might be. Tonight, as you rest, feel how the air moves through the window. Let it carry you. Let it remind you of a time when knowledge was not written, but felt. Let it rock you as it once rocked the tall grasses, as it once rocked the cradle of your kind. You are not separate from it. You are not different. You are breath and breeze. You are silence and sound. You are a body the wind remembers. And when it leaves again, as it always does, you know it will return. Changed, perhaps, but still familiar. Still singing in a language older than speech. Still brushing the skin of those who dream. Still passing between worlds like a messenger without shape. Carrying a memory of you to places your feet will never reach. It goes on, not in straight lines, but in circles, in currents, in echoes. And as you drift into sleep, something within you drifts with it. Lighter than thought, deeper than memory. You rest now, listening without ears, remembering without effort. And the wind, patient and nameless, waits just beyond the veil, whispering softly that there is more to come, that the sky still holds a voice, that the next story begins not with fire or stone, but with something even more ancient. Chapter 12, The Ones Who Vanished. They gather around a fire that no longer burns, yet you feel its warmth on the inside of your ribs. The flame flickers not in the world, but in your memory, etched somewhere between marrow and myth. These were the ones whose names were never carved into stone, whose footprints did not outlast the rains. But they lived, they laughed, they suffered, they disappeared. Still, somehow, you carry them. In the curve of your hands, in the silence that sometimes stirs your chest at night, in the dreams that arrive without warning. They are not gone. They are only out of sight. You walk through a valley where the wind does not speak aloud, only rustles faintly like a breath forgotten. It is here, beneath the roots of old trees and buried ice, that the lost ones rest. Not in coffins or shrines, but within the layers of earth that know how to remember. These are the clans who wandered too far or stayed too long, who didn't outrun a drought or a sickness, or the sorrow that follows hunger. No one carved their tales into cliffs. No one marked their departure. And yet, in your bones, there is an ache that knows them, as if part of you was left behind in their vanishing. Perhaps it was a small tribe who danced under the cold auroras, their drums made of seal hide, their songs too quiet to echo past the ice. Maybe they lit fires near the edge of the world, painting on cave walls not to be seen, but simply because they felt the urge to mark a moment, to press beauty into darkness. Then the winter grew longer. A mother hummed her last lullaby. A child's breath turned to frost, and silence, wide and white, took them, but not completely, because in you, a distant pulse mimics their rhythm. When you hum without knowing why, when you fear the cold without having known it, when you look at fire and feel older than it, they left no cities, no coins, no gods that made it to temples, but maybe they whispered to rivers, or dreamed of deer that never came. Their rituals may live on only in fragments now, the way you pause before stepping into still water, the instinct to light a candle when the night feels too wide. You wonder, sometimes, if grief could be inherited, if you can mourn a people you never met, if there are tears in you that do not belong to your life, but to a long dusk where no one returned. And what of their children, if any? Did they scatter like seeds on wind, becoming branches of other stories? Or did the line end, like a breath held too long? There is a kind of sacredness in an ending with no one watching, a dignity in disappearing without disaster or legend, just a quiet folding back into the earth. And in that return, they became part of everything. The soil that fed the roots, the wind that sings in mountain passes, the hush that stills the forest before snowfall. When you feel wonder for no reason, it might be them. You imagine a figure sitting alone by dying coals. They do not know the word last. They only feel the quiet. Their fingers trace spirals in the dust, not as art, but as instinct. And those spirals, unknowingly, resemble the galaxies their eyes never saw, or the fingerprints of descendants they never met. But you see them. Through the veil of time, through the ache of forgetting, you see a glimpse. A mother who kissed a child's brow. A hunter who did not return. A voice that sang once, then vanished into wind. They do not beg to be remembered, and yet they are. When the stars shift slowly overhead, you sometimes feel a name forming on your tongue. A name you've never heard, but one that feels like it belongs. Perhaps that is how they live now. Not in lineage or language, but in sudden familiarity. In dreams where you stand in unfamiliar places and feel at home. In the way you tilt your head toward a sound you cannot hear, as though someone just left the room. These forgotten ones teach nothing by doctrine. They offer no laws, no scriptures, only presence. Only the simple truth that not all life leaves legacy, and not all value is found in survival. Sometimes to have existed is enough. To have loved, even briefly. To have watched the sky and wondered. To have tried. And you, with all your yearning and remembering, you are a continuation of that. A vessel for their invisible breath. And so you sit, even now, beside them in a way. Across time's wide river, your silence meets theirs. You do not need to speak. You only need to feel. The warmth in your chest that has no source. The sorrow that arrives on windless nights. The strange joy of knowing you are not alone, even in your solitude. These are the fingerprints they left behind, not on stone, but on soul. Perhaps one day, far ahead, you too will become a vanishing. Your name softened by centuries, your fire left behind. And someone else will feel you not through story, but through sensation. Through a breeze that brushes their cheek with no cause. Through a lullaby hummed by instinct. Through a fear of deep water or a joy at first snow. And they will not know why, but it will be enough. And so, as you drift now into sleep, feel the weight of all who came before you, even those who vanished. They have not gone. They have only changed shape. They rise in your breath. They blink through your eyes. And somewhere in the hush between thoughts, they wait. Chapter 13, The Shape of the Soul. You sit by the fire as you always have. Not just in this night, but in all the nights that came before, and all the nights that seem to stretch quietly behind the stars. The heat of the flames flickers across your skin, and the air smells of ash, bark, and breath. You reach your hand toward the earth, and the soil feels cool beneath your fingertips. With one slow motion, you draw a spiral round and round, a single curve that never ends. You don't speak because there is no need. There is no word for soul. Not yet, but you know it. You know it like you know hunger or the warmth of a mother's hand. It lives not in your chest, not behind your ribs, but in the way the smoke rises, in the curve of a tusk left behind, in the hollow of a bone where wind still sings. You do not worship it. You follow it. You return to it. You shape it. There was a time before gods, before names, before carved idols and thunderous hymns. There was a time when you sat still enough to feel the world breathing with you. The wind didn't just touch your hair. It whispered something you could almost understand, not in language, but in rhythm, in gesture, in silence. You knew the world not as a thing to be owned or feared, but as a being that pulsed with you, laughed with you, mourned with you. The soul was never something you possessed. It was something you were part of, the way a stone is part of a mountain or a ripple belongs to water. And so, when you shaped the spiral or painted a hand on stone, you weren't making art. You were remembering. You were listening. The elders never said the soul was inside the body. They pointed to the trees, to the river, to the sky that watched even when they slept. Your soul was there too. It was in the warmth of the fire that fed you, in the tracks of an animal you followed, in the cries of the child who had not yet spoken. It moved like light across your vision in dreams, like the stars that returned each season as if they remembered your face. You did not pray, but you offered. A stone, a feather, a drop of blood. You gave back to the shape that had given you breath. You did not build temples. You built circles, hearts, openings in caves where voices could echo and not be lost. You built space to remember, and sometimes, in the night, you heard the shape of the soul in things that had no voice. In the hum of insects beneath the leaves, in the rustle of grass when no wind stirred. You didn't know how to name it, so you didn't. You listened instead. You watched. You waited. The soul taught in patterns. The flight of birds, the rising of smoke, the way trees leaned toward light. You mimicked. You shaped. You walked gently because everything around you was alive in a way language could not catch. You learned that the soul was not a flame, not a cloud, not a whisper. It was all of them. It changed shape depending on who saw it, who needed it, who called it. You remember a time when you buried someone you loved. Not with a stone to mark their name, they had none, but with beads, ochre, and silence. You didn't cry loudly. You pressed your hand to the earth and waited. You believed their soul wasn't gone. It had simply changed paths. You felt it lingering near the fire, in the shadows of the trees, in the eyes of an animal that watched you without fear. This too was a shape, a cycle, a turning spiral that returned again and again, never ending, never beginning. Death was not the opposite of life. It was part of its curve. Sometimes you would lie on your back beneath the endless sky, stars like seeds scattered across velvet, and you would feel your body dissolve. You weren't separate from the stars, you were a thread in their weaving. The soul wasn't something you had to earn or find. It was something you touched the moment you were born. Something that breathed with you before you knew what breath was. Something that watched from the trees, from the fire, from the still surface of water reflecting the moon. It was simple. It was vast. It was you and not you. There were no doctrines, no commandments. There were gestures. There were stories. There was the shape of your hand on the cave wall, left in ash and hope. There was the trail of footsteps that led others safely to water. There was the way your voice blended into a chant without needing melody. You were not alone. The soul was communal, a shared current, a memory passed in rhythm, from drumbeat to heartbeat to the hush between breaths. And sometimes, when all sounds faded, you could feel it most clearly. In stillness, in quiet, in the hush of snow on the wind. Now, as you trace your spiral again in the dust, the shape feels familiar. Not just because you have drawn it before, but because it was always there, beneath your ribs, behind your breath, within the circle of stones. You aren't inventing. You are uncovering, returning. The soul has never left. It simply waits for you to slow down enough to feel it. Not as a word, not as a weight, but as a pattern, as shape, as echo. It asks nothing but presence, teaches nothing but remembering. It is not a path you walk. It is the walking. And when you close your eyes tonight, you do not leave the world. You drift into its folds, like smoke into sky, like roots into soil. You become again what you never stopped being. A shape within a shape, a breath within a breath. The soul curls beside you like an old animal, warm and wise. It does not speak, but you understand. You understand that the journey is not toward some far place, but deeper into this one. That the spiral leads not out, but inward and then around again. And so, before the gods arrived, before the names were spoken, before the soul became a word in books and temples, it was something you touched with bare hands. Something you felt in the curve of your own shadow. It was not in the sky above. It was in the dust you pressed your fingers into. It was in the spiral, the circle, the ember that refused to die. It was in the waiting, and as you begin to drift, something inside you stirs. Not a thought, but a shape. A motion without beginning. A memory not yours, yet entirely you. Somewhere ahead, something stirs in the wind. A story without a voice. A presence without a face. It watches you with quiet, ancient patience. And you begin to wonder if the soul ever needed a name at all. Chapter 14. We return in ash. The fire has gone quiet now. It whispers only in threads of smoke, curling into the dawn with a language softer than speech. You sit beside it, your knees drawn near, and watch the last ember crumble. What once crackled with heat and hunger has become powder, pale and weightless, dancing on the breeze. It drifts into the folds of your skin and you do not brush it away. Because you know deep in the marrow that this ash once had a name. Once was a limb, a leaf, a voice. The ash returns, as all things do. It is not loss. It is the motion of memory folding itself back into the world. In the old caves, your ancestors painted not only the hunt but the hands that held it. They traced their palms in ochre and dust, red breath pressed into the stone. But what happened when the breath was gone? What color painted the absence? Even then, they must have seen the truth you now sit with. Nothing vanishes. Not truly. The hand becomes smoke. The smoke becomes cloud. The cloud becomes rain. The rain becomes root. And from the root, another hand reaching again toward flame. You are held in a loop so sacred, so vast, that even your vanishing has shape. Even your forgetting becomes part of the remembering. There is a kind of silence that only follows fire. Not the silence of emptiness, but of completion, of sacred return. You feel it now in your chest, where the warmth lingers after the light is gone. The ash rests on the earth like a hush after a song, a soft exhale where once there was melody. You scoop a handful and let it fall through your fingers. It doesn't cling. It doesn't resist. It surrenders. Ash teaches you this. How to let go without bitterness. How to fall without fear. How to feed the soil even as you disappear. And the soil remembers. Every step you take presses deeper into a tapestry of stories woven beneath your feet. Roots drink what once burned. Grasses grow from the bones of the fallen. Even now, your body hums with the knowledge that you too will return. Not as you are, but as all you have touched. The warmth you've given, the laughter you've shared, the sorrow you've carried. These do not vanish. They become sediment. They become seed. You are a becoming always, a returning, a soft cycle of flame and root and breath. Think of the hearths where stories were told long after the speaker had gone. Think of the scent of smoke on a garment, still clinging days after the fire was gone. Think of the way grief settles, not to erase, but to hold. This is the nature of ash. It is the veil between presence and absence, the thin skin of twilight where past and future meet. You are here now, not to mourn what ends, but to witness what continues beneath the ending. You are here to remember that even silence speaks, even dust sings. A child walks barefoot across the remains of last night's fire. She leaves footprints in the gray powder, each step a quiet echo, and you see it, how every mark we leave eventually softens into the world. Not forgotten, transformed. She laughs, and her joy stirs the air. The ash rises. The memory dances. There is no fear in her, no dread in the dust. Only play, only lightness, and you, watching, remember. This is how we return, not with grand declarations, but with grace, with stillness, with the quiet generosity of flame becoming soil. Close your eyes for a moment. Let the smoke speak to your breath. Inhale the echo of forests, of bones, of lost songs. Exhale with reverence. This is not mourning. This is ceremony. This is how you say thank you to what has given you warmth, to what has burned so that you could see in the dark. The ash blesses your skin. The earth holds your feet. The night gives way to a dawn shaped by all that returned to become it. You are not separate from this rhythm. You are its heartbeat. In time, your own flame will flicker. Your breath will grow still. And when it does, remember this moment. The hush of ash, the curl of smoke, the soil receiving. You will not vanish. You will continue in the hands of those you've touched, in the fires you've kindled, in the wind that carries your laughter. This is not the end. This is the soft turning, the sacred fold. You are the dust that dreams again. And as the morning breeze gathers what remains of the fire, carrying it outward into leaf and root and riverbank, you feel yourself soften too, like a story finding its way back into the mouth of the earth. You are not gone. You are becoming. And somewhere, beneath this very sky, a seed begins to stir. The smoke fades, but a shape remains in the silence. Something half remembered, waiting just beneath the soil. In the next chapter, it will rise. Chapter 15. The last firelight before the ice. You sit close to the fire, your knees drawn in, your breath low and steaming in the night air. Around you, the others settle quietly, as if the cold has spoken and they've heard its meaning. The wind no longer dances. It leans in now, heavier, older, a voice from deep in the north that says, soon. But no one runs. No one pleads. The tribe has seen this rhythm before, in bones unearthed from frozen caves and in the sudden silence of birds that once sang deep into autumn. This, you understand, is a return. Not an end, not a punishment. Turning. And as the warmth of the fire paints shadows onto rock and skin, your people press into its memory. You do not speak, but you remember. The stories told in smoke and rhythm are already in you, sung into the marrow of your childhood by grandmothers with twilight eyes. You remember how the stars once shimmered green, and how the moon gave birth to wolves. You remember the first man who caught the thunderbird's feather and lit the world. These are not lies, not myths. These are your truths, wrapped in rhythm so they may be carried. Because in your world, to carry a story is to carry life. And now, as the last season of green fades from your world, what you carry becomes everything. Your hands rest over your belly, where hunger hums like a soft drum, familiar and present. There will be fewer roots now, fewer running herds. The rivers will slow, clotting into glass. Yet you do not fear. The fire within you still burns, a fire of knowledge, of togetherness, of seeing what cannot be seen with eyes alone. The elders call this warmth the first flame, the one passed from the sky into the chest of every human. Not the flame that cooks meat or lights the cave, but the one that sings in silence when all else has gone quiet. Tonight, that flame dances in every face around the fire. It flickers in the furrowed brow of the old hunter who once wrestled a boar. It gleams in the tear that slips down the cheek of the woman who buries her child's wooden toy beneath the snow. It lingers in the steady gaze of the child who listens, even now, even without words, to everything. The fire paints everyone in gold, reminding them, you were born to pass this light on. The smoke curls upward and speaks to the night. You follow it with your eyes, watching it thread between branches and vanish into the ink sky. Somewhere up there, the old ones are watching, not as ghosts, but as echoes not lost, but waiting. They have seen this winter before, and they have seen what comes after. A world reshaped, mountains softened, rivers reborn. But first the cold, first the stillness, first the long breath in. You close your eyes and feel the earth beneath you, not hard, but holding. Even in its chill, the ground accepts your weight, your breath, your bones. It remembers every footprint ever made, every life that knelt upon it. This ground is not dying. It is storing. It is gathering every heartbeat, every step, every birth and burial, and tucking them away like seeds. Nothing is ever lost, only placed in a different kind of silence. The storyteller leans forward now. She does not shout. She whispers, for in the final nights before the freeze, whispers are sacred. The loud are lost in wind, but the soft find a place to settle. Her voice is like a stone dipped in honey, steady, slow, shaped by time. She speaks not to teach, but to remind. Her tale begins not with a hero, but with the wind itself. It tells of the time before snow, before fear, before fire even had a name, when the breath of the world shaped the first rhythm, and that rhythm became life. You listen, not with ears alone, but with skin, with ribs, with your pulse. Every word is a step taken across generations. Every pause is a burial, every breath a birth. You know this story, not because you heard it before, but because it has always lived in you. This is the tale that wakes in you when the stars turn pale and the animals grow silent. The story that walks beside you when you are alone. The one that says, even in the ice you will not forget who you are. The flames crackle, and sparks leap like tiny ancestors returning to the sky. You imagine them whispering goodbyes, or perhaps hellos, to a world they no longer walk. Somewhere in the dark, an animal cries out, not from fear, but from knowing. The same knowing that sits in your chest now like a sleeping animal, curled and calm. This is not panic. This is not despair. This is the memory of something deeper. The knowing that seasons have always circled, that humans have always endured, that firelight has always found a way. Someone sings. It is not a song with words, but with tone. A low, humming thing that sways like grass before snow. It rises slowly, then falls again, matching the breath of the tribe. One by one, others join, until the night is full of gentle sound. It is not for performance. It is not for prayer. It is for weaving. This is how you stitch warmth between souls. This is how you tell the sky you are still here. This is how you promise one another, I will not forget your face, even when the world turns white. You reach out and touch the shoulder of the person beside you. They do not turn, but they lean slightly, enough for warmth to pass between you like breath. The air grows colder, but your chest glows. You are not alone. And even when the fire is buried in snow, its memory will remain. In ash, in bone, in story. The ice may silence footsteps, may steal color, may press heavy upon the hills, but it cannot unmake the fire. It cannot erase the hum in your blood that still sings of mothers and mountains and the sun. The flame grows smaller now, not from death, but from completion. It has given what it was meant to give. The tribe will sleep soon, not out of weariness, but of trust. You press your hand to your chest and feel the echo. That echo is everything. It is where your name will live, even when names have melted from memory. It is where your story waits, curled like a child in warmth, breathing softly through the long night. And above you, the stars blink quietly, unafraid.